Welcome back to another episode of the Tommy Brideson Show. I want to chat specifically about what it takes to be great. Now, we're going to talk about this, how it works with training, but this obviously can be applied to so many different areas, work, life, relationships. But when we look at training, we often see people that at their peak. They obviously, have spent so much time doing base work and, getting themselves to the point that, they become known to us. But we're seeing them at the very, very top. Like let's a bodybuilder or a power lifter, they probably only come onto the scene or on your feed, for instance, on Instagram, when they're absolutely exceeding and they're doing really well. So when we look on from that as, a viewer, we don't see all the hard work and, the years of dedicated pursuit towards a goal. We don't see any of the formal work unless we've been following their journey. But for a lot of people, we don't. We only see them at the top. So I think when we think about people who are winning and they're doing really well, we have to acknowledge how much work it's taken to get there. It's not just by chance or by luck that they've gotten there. They have shown up every single day. They've put the work in. They're self-motivated. They're, dedicated to the cause. They've probably fallen out of love with the process of, their goals and the direction that they're going, and lost sight, and then fallen back in love with it and continue to persevere and push on. And, it's very easy to say and look at someone and go, oh, they're lucky, or, they've got great genetics, or they're a fantastic lifter. I bet you they were always strong. But the reality is, hard work and sticking to the process and, putting, the sets and reps in every single week is going to be the thing that's going to push you forward. And that will always beat talent, because talent normally comes in with less drive, less dedication. Sure, they may be able to execute, but someone who's really driven and wants to be better is going to do their homework. They're going to do their research. They're going to do all the 1%ers in order to make sure that they show up every day. Now, when we look at like training, for instance, there's so many components of training that you really need to dial into and you need to prioritize in order to be great. So I'm going to relate this to powerlifting, for instance, but if you want to be at your peak and you want to be strong, you want to build muscle mass, you want to have energy for, things, outside of just training and powerlifting, you need to be doing all the small things right. You need to be eating well, and you need to be eating to fuel your body. Not just aesthetically, like fuel your body for your training. You need to be hydrating. You need to be, prioritizing your rest and downtime. So that's not just sleep. That's just time where, you're rejuvenating, whether it's just, binging on the lounge, watching some TV, or going for a walk for some mindfulness. You need to be really, mindful of where your energy is spent. And I think, if we look at like a training week and we look at, someone who's really into training and powerlifting, you might spend, say 8 to 12 hours in the gym training. So there's a lot of time outside of that where you could be leaking energy. You could be, wasting energy on, not wasting, but, spending energy in social interactions in areas that just take away from your cup. So, if we're looking at someone that's really competitive and they're, trying to stay within a weight class, it's not just by chance that you stay in a weight class. Like as you start to get stronger and stronger, you're naturally going to build more and more muscle mass. And then, that then pushes you up into the next bracket of, weight divisions. But, to stay lean, you need to, be prepping your food. You need to be tracking your food every day, like planning ahead, making sure that if you have a social event coming up, how are you going to, juggle that? How are you going to, make sure that you're maximizing the nutrition you get and also not wasting calories on like, silly foods that you want, because your goal is performance. So you should be eating for performance. So it's like, do I eat before? Do I take food with me? How do I plan out my day? And these are all the things that you don't see when you're seeing snippets of people's lifestyle. You're seeing them at the top and you're seeing them performing really well, but you're not seeing all the nuances and, all the sacrifices and the hard work that they put into their lifestyle and their day to day. Now, I think anyone that's performing at a really high standard, they set their own standards. And I think that's something that is, yeah, you can work towards, setting your own standard and get better. But people that do well set their own standards. They hold themselves accountable to the work that they need to put in. They set the alarms to get up in the morning to go training. They make sure that they've got their food prepped. They make sure that, if they have an injury or a niggle, they address it. They don't just hope it goes away. There's nothing by chance. They set the standard daily to make sure that they're putting in the work to get to where they want to be. There's no luck in this. There's a certain element of luck in life, but, if you're, working your way into, being stronger, being bigger, being, better body composition, it's not by luck that this happens. It comes by planning and more so setting your own standard. Along with that, I think there's a certain level of selfishness that has to come with it. You are saying no to events. You're, potentially, not hanging out with certain friend groups because, for reasons such as, they might not be the best influence on your recovery, on your energy. You might end up, going out drinking with them. So you end up, setting boundaries with people because of a certain level of selfishness that you want to adhere to. You want to make sure that, when you come in, say you're squatting on a Sunday, you want to make sure that you're fresh on a Sunday. You're not only coming in rusty, having had, 6 beers the night before. So there's a certain element of self-preservation and selfishness that you need to adhere to in order to actually, continue to progress over time. Don't get me wrong, this stuff ramps up over time as well. Like you might start out pretty lax and getting into the gym and, but as you build and you get better, then you start to set these standards and this level of selfishness because you can see the potential and it's a journey that you want to be on. So I think, even, if you think of like social outings, like with family, with friends, with colleagues, if you work in corporate, for instance, it's expected that you go out for drinks with the team on Friday, for instance, or, at Christmas, or Christmas Eve, having a few drinks, that's kind of expected. But, as you're setting the standard, you also set these boundaries that you don't want to partake in that. It doesn't mean that you're not going to go. But the reality is you then start to say no to things because your goals and, your desire to be great is bigger than just, a transient kind of moment in time. And I don't think your friend group and a lot of the friends that you probably surround yourself with when you start on these journeys really understand the journey you're on. So it actually can kind of be like you're an alien. It's kind of like, oh, wow, you're obsessed with this or you're obsessed with training. Like, you're a gym junkie, you're a gym freak. And it's like, no, I'm actually kind of just like working my way towards a goal that I'm really passionate about. And, that's actually become my lifestyle. So by you saying no and you continuing to sort of put boundaries in place, people may not understand that. They may with time and they may never. So that might also then mean that your friend group changes or, you have different conversations with your family because you're like, well, I'm not going to partake on that conversation with them because it ends up turning into me, apparently being obsessed with something. But, but it's just, there's a mismatch in people understand and people's values, right? So there's all these tricky kind of situations that arise as a result of you becoming better. And I think this is something that, no one really ever speaks about. And it's actually quite hard to juggle because the normal and the expected is, you kind of just show up and do what you've always done. But to do something different, it actually, it is more than actually just showing up. It actually is, it's a reshaping of what you do as a lifestyle and, how you show up daily. And I think that's the standard that you set. And, with that comes a certain element of like selfishness. Now, the other thing is as well is things take time. They really do. You want to be taking and, getting wins along the way, if it's purely strength standard, like you want to be getting stronger over time. You want to be putting on more muscle mass. But, if you see someone at their peak and they're training really hard and, you're like, wow, that person, like I would love to get to that level. They've probably spent 10 to 20 years in the trenches. Like, it might not have been purely specific towards the, the goal that they have at the moment. But they've spent a serious amount of time. They may have spent, time growing up doing athletics and, spending time in the gym, jumped into bodybuilding, jumped into a different sport of such. And then they've sort of ended up, moving into sort of the powerlifting scene, for instance. So, there's a lot of time served there, and, just motor control and, work ethic and, understanding that when you put in the work, you get the results. So the time served towards something you can't fake. And, don't get me wrong, some people come in and, they're incredibly talented and you're like, wow, that person has so much potential. But it doesn't mean they're going to reach it either, right? Like, just because they have potential, it doesn't mean that they have the desire, the dedication, and, and everything to sort of work towards that goal as well. So I think, time served in anything is really important. But then also looking at, like, there's a saying where it's like, the people that are the strongest, or the people at their peak in terms of like sport, athletics, performance, are the ones that stay injury free. So, whenever you're injured, it's time out of doing what you need to be doing. It's less time doing the thing that you need to do to get better. So there's an element of then recovery. There's an element of, making sure you're doing all the right things in terms of like rehab and prehab and, getting treatment and, showing up for the things that essentially is delayed gratification. Like, if I go and get treatment, so say I don't have an injury right now and I go in and I get treatment, I might not feel the direct effects of that, but I feel it as a whole. Like, I feel like my body is moving better as a result of continually showing up and doing those things. I know I have my weekly session or my bi-weekly session booked in, and say we work on my range of movement in certain areas. I know that I have the required range of movement to do my sport. And there might not be a direct carryover in the session and be like, wow, that's amazing. I feel that treatment session that I heard earlier in the week. But as a whole, if you're continuing to, push forward towards your goals in terms of training, you're continuing to push forward, that is where you're getting like that delayed gratification and, the accumulation of everything sort of coming together. And I think, you'll go through phases of your journey as well where you'll question it and you'll be like, why am I even doing this? And that's normal. And that, that might be after a period of adversity or a period where you feel like you haven't made the progress that you need to, or that you have wanted to have made. Like, say for instance, you did 2 comps sort of close together. And one of them wasn't ideal. It wasn't the comp that you wanted, or you didn't put the numbers up that you wanted. You have to sort of, reverse engineer that a little bit as well and look at it and go, okay, well, I've done all this work. My data from my training program, checks out. Like, I'm making progress, but maybe it was your expectation that you had on yourself. So you went in with a goal that you're like, hey, I want to hit X, and you didn't hit it. So then you're like, that was a failed prep, or, I've been wasting my time. And then you may start to question it. But, when you start to look at it all and you start to, you have to keep it almost a log of the progress that you've made over time. So that's actually a really cool thing about like having an Instagram where it's a training reel, because you can go back and, you can scroll through even on your phone, you can go back and you can scroll through and have a look at the progress that you've made over time. And, it's profound. It's, if you look back 3 years prior to where you are now, and if you have shown up and you have put the work into being great, you'll be baffled by how much progress you've actually made, but sometimes it feels like you haven't. So you'll have periods where you will question it as well. And you're like, am I doing the right things? Am I doing enough work? And, have I put the effort in that I need to put in to continue to push forward? And these are all normal conversations you have with yourself. And normally they are with yourself, because, you are the person that's holding yourself accountable to your goals. And I think, something, that should be spoken about is nothing's given. Nothing is given. If you were, lifting your heaviest weights last year, it doesn't mean that this year you're going to be lifting your heaviest weights. Like, if you haven't continued to push forward and you haven't continued to, stay focused towards your goals, you can't expect to be having, to be at your peak, to be making the huge amount of progress that you may have seen in earlier years. So nothing is given in terms of progress either. So I think, wrapping things up a little bit as well is, being great takes a lot. It takes a lot of internal dialogue, motivation, for lack of better words, dedication when other people don't also see it as well. Like you have to see it and you have to show up daily. And, you know, you need to know your why. And you might not be able to pinpoint your why, but there will be a why. There will be a reason why you're showing up. It could be for, you know, just, you know, you like the progress that you're making. If, you know, I think, you know, in a world, and I have this conversation a lot, but in a world where literally everything is our fingertips, people love the progress that they make through training because it shows them the process. So, you know, your why could be as simple as that. For others, it may be something different, but there will be a why pushing you. So, you know, these are the type of conversations that you're having with yourself more so than your coach, for instance. You need to keep yourself accountable. You need to be showing up. You know, no one else can do the work for you. But then also know that there's layers to it as well. Like, you know, where you start now, your level of dedication and your level of progress may be different in 3 to 5 years' time. So you don't have to come in with perfect. We want to look for progress, but to be great, we just need to start. Like that is the biggest thing. You know, your end goal is going to chop and change along the way. You know, your journey is going to change, but you know, you just need to start. And then as you start to put these processes in place, you start to get better. You know, you have problems that you run into along the way. And then as a result of that problem or some adversity, you will then put another process in, or you might find that, you know, you're not recovering enough. So you're like, okay, I'm going to add in a massage a week that's just going to help me sort of continue to recover so that I can continue to progress forward. So the journey of self-improvement is awesome. It's such a rewarding process, but you need to start and you need to be the one that holds yourself accountable, and you need to set the standard for what you're trying to get towards and what you're trying to, you know, your end result is trying to be, even if it changes along the way. So to be great, you need to put in the work, and the standard is set by you. And that's it for me today. I'll see you guys on the next episode.